All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this one, I wanted to really talk about some of the positive takeaways, in my opinion, from the New York Jets at Carolina Panthers preseason week 1 matchup. As we all know, though, second preseason game for the Jets. For me, going into the game, I wanted to see more Zach Wilson snaps, more Mekhi Becton snaps, more starters, looking more of a complete unit out there, less confusion, less penalties. We're going to get into all of it, but overall, like a blanket statement, the Jets looked a lot better yesterday against the Panthers than they did against the Browns in the Hall of Fame game. So let's start with the defensive side of the football, okay? To me, this was the storyline, right? I know Zach Wilson had good stats, and we're going to talk about it. But for me, to see the defense flying around without CJ Mosley, without Sauce Gardner and Carl Lawson, Quincy Williams, Quinnen Williams, all these different guys, no Adrian Amos, no Tony Adams, no DJ Reed. So many starters did not play for the defense, yet they looked like a top unit in football. Think about that for a second. Now, of course, if I start thinking about it a lot, I get really hyped up, and I'm thinking, hey, our backups are going to be, our backups are good enough to be a top 15 unit. But then it kind of, reality hits. Hey, it's preseason. It's Bryce Young's first NFL action. It's Frank Reich pulling up with a game plan that's extremely vanilla. They frankly showed. They hardly showed anything. There was no sort of pre-snap movement or anything like that. There was no smoke and mirrors. It was literally call the play, get to the line, snap the football, and we'll just see how it goes. That's the type of stuff that I took away from that first team Carolina Panther offense. Granted, there were some starters out there, right? Ekwonu at tackle, Adam Thielen was out there making plays, DJ Chark, but for the most part, I felt like from a game plan, from a play calling perspective, Frank Reich did not show anything. So with that being said, we have to take the performance slightly with a grain of salt. Understand that it wasn't a regular season game, but at the same time, looking at it like, all right, well, from a one-on-one matchup perspective, our guys won. Right, Jermaine Johnson ripping past the tackle, Will McDonald racking up the sack, right? We constantly had guys in the backfield. We constantly provided pressure against the quarterback, whether it was Bryce Young or Matt Corral. It wasn't a situation where Bryce Young was just a deer in headlights, completely rattled out of his mind. Not in the least. I actually felt like Bryce Young did a good job of being able to process, go through, figure out what the defense is doing and find the open guy. But there were just points where the DNs and the defensive tackles were just getting through the offensive line too quickly, right? So we had the 4 sacks as a unit, but we can even look at the quarterback hits, right? There were times where Bryce Young would throw a nice pass and then just get lit up by a defender. And, thinking about the regular season, right, that just me kind of being like more of a defensive minded guy. I just prefer the defense side of the football, as opposed to offense. I like it when the defense can get in the minds of the opposing quarterback, especially if we're talking about some of the best in football. We're going to need those enforcers. Quincy Williams has shown he's an enforcer. But on the defensive line, and granted, it's preseason, I get that, but I like the aggressiveness. I like the physicality. I like not shying away from a little bit of contact. I think it sets the tone. I think it sets the tone that we're not here to get run over. We're not here to allow this quarterback to sit back there and pick us apart for 250, 300, 350 passing yards. We are coming to wreck game plans. That's our goal. We are going to disrupt the quarterback. We are going to disrupt the timing of the play. We're going to get in wide receivers' heads. We are going to make sure that wide receivers and tight ends going over the middle of the field or running backs in the flat are thinking about getting hit. They're hearing footsteps, right, that might not be there, because we're going to bring that intensity. And that was on full display from the first quarter through the fourth quarter, hence the 27-0 final score. But we can throw the score out the window. Just look at the intensity level. I mean, these guys were flying around the football field on defense, and it was awesome. It was flat out awesome, right? So the defensive line depth, the defensive line talent, the youth as well, the upside, and understanding that, Yes, Will McDonald looked really good. Yes, Jermaine Johnson looked really good. But if you put yourself in their shoes for a second, like think about if you're Will McDonald, right? You're coming to a Jets squad with a coaching staff that not only just took you in the first round, but they have a track record of getting the most out of defensive linemen, getting after the passer. Whether you want to go back to San Francisco or, what have you with Saleh, that is a huge, huge benefit in and of itself. You move on and think about the guys around you. You aren't Aiden Hutchinson with the Lions. His rookie season, right? Second overall pick, and it's like, all right, we're going to have a tough time on defense. We're going to need Aiden to be our primary pass rusher, do all of the dirty work, get after the quarterback every single week. You have to be the face of the defense. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of expectations. And, to be fair, Hutchinson was the second overall pick. With that comes massive expectations. But Will McDonald is not in that position. Quinton Williams is there on the inside. Quentin Jefferson is there on the inside to get after the passer. We have Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson and Bryce Huff on the outside, and Michael Clemens as well. There are multiple guys to get after the quarterback. Will McDonald's now in a position where you have the coaching staff behind him. You already know what you can do from a physical standpoint. You look at the Iowa State career, it was electric, right? Just what he was asked to do, showing off the defensive line versatility, getting after the passer, getting in the backfield, all these different, things. Just a great college resume. So Will McDonald understands that about himself. He knows he has a great team around him. Again, the coaches have his back. I mean, what more can you ask for if you're Will? You could, there's a lot of times where draft picks, come into the league and they're like, man, this situation is not ideal. It's not ideal. Maybe forced to start too early. Maybe not that good of a coaching staff on that specific side of the football, i.e. Sam Darnold. There's a lot of unfortunate situations like that. Will McDonald is not in that whatsoever. It's actually, in my opinion, the opposite. He is in the perfect situation to not only just have some success this year, but to grow physically, to grow mentally, to grow within the Saleh and Ulbrich system. So, and same could be said for Jermaine Johnson. You can make all those same points. He's going to have opportunities to get better because he's not the sole player, the only good defensive end that the Jets have. He can dish out, he can delegate some of the pass rushing responsibilities to the other defensive linemen because the Jets are just so damn stacked in the trenches defensively. So that was a massive, massive benefit. Huge. And I know I might sound crazy because it's literally the first preseason game of the NFL outside of the Hall of Fame game. And it's dude, relax, chill out. Teams, can rack up 40 points and go undefeated and look horrible in the regular season. I completely get that. But when we look at individual performances, when we look at the team, the team's performance in specific units, I was just blown away by how physically dominant and at the same time how young the Jets defensive line looked against the Carolina Panthers, the majority of their starters. Next up, Zach Wilson, and this was a huge, huge point in the recap video that I posted. Yes, numbers-wise, he looked great. He was 14 of 20. He had the touchdown pass, didn't turn the football over, didn't really look rattled, but more importantly, I was searching for Zach Wilson to play within the confines of the offense, right? Go out there and have the schematic discipline, if you will. Hackett calls a play. Can Wilson take this play, relay it to the huddle, line up, snap the ball, and execute the play the way it was designed to be executed? And I felt like for the most part, Wilson did that, right? Throughout the Mike LaFleur era, or really, through Zach Wilson's first 2 years, whether we're talking preseason, whether we're talking regular season, joint practices as well, Zach had some inconsistencies there, sitting in a perfectly clean pocket and then just having the need to escape, to leave a perfectly clean pocket, thus maybe missing guys or missing progressions because he's leaving early when he doesn't necessarily have to be. Maybe if you hang in for another half second, that target can break open. That's where Mike LaFleur is, that's where that play is telling him to throw the football. Given the look, he's not going to be throwing that pass. Why? Because he's running out to his right when he doesn't need to be. He doesn't want to get hit. Or it can be a situation where he gets hit early on and now you start having that internal clock speed up. I felt like in that Panther game, and also too in the Cleveland Browns game, he looks a little bit more calm. And of course that comes with age. Of course that comes with him, having so much talent and him entering year 3. Of course, like, on the surface, I get it. Like, if you're a Panther fan or if you're, a fan of another team and you're watching this, you could be saying to yourself, like, why in the world is this guy, like, getting excited about Zach Wilson hitting check down passes? Like, this dude was the 2nd overall pick, supposed to be the face of the franchise. He's going into year 3 and you're hoping for check downs. But the sad reality is I am hoping for that because we got Aaron Rodgers as the starter. At this point in time, the Jets are viewing Zach Wilson as a backup. And because he is still a young quarterback, because he still has time to grow, you don't go from absolutely horrendous to an elite quarterback overnight. You don't make that monumental jump in the span of one off season with a new offensive coordinator. So for me, it's all about just taking steps in the right direction and stacking days, stacking practices, stacking reps up, right? Can you do the little things, right? Because if you start doing the little things or, really the core fundamentals correctly from the jump, now all of a sudden you're set up for, a road with a lot of success. If Zach Wilson can, again, get the play in, communicate it to his teammates, go out there and execute the play, go through his reads, stay in the pocket, right? Of course, unless it breaks down and you need to have that escapability, but just routinely, he can go out there and say 1, 2, 3, getting a little dicey, let me check it down, and complete that pass with accuracy, have the same consistent mechanics, play in, play out, having the knowledge and the processing abilities to, make good decisions with the football. That is what I want to see. Whether the wide receiver drops the pass or not, or they can't get their feet in bounds, whatever the case is, if Zach Wilson can rewatch the tape and say, oh, the reason why this play didn't work out is because he dropped the ball, or, maybe my mechanics weren't the best on this one, but I made the correct read. I just couldn't get the ball out, like from a physical standpoint on time. Basically, the point is, can he identify the problems? I think if he can nail the three big issues, the mechanics, the decision-making, and the processing, if he could do those 3 things from a day-to-day in terms of practice and week-to-week standpoint, I think we will feel comfortable if Zach Wilson has to play in the regular season, right? Week 10, week 11 rolls around and it's like, hey, Rodgers, whatever, has to miss some time. Zach Wilson comes in, it's not game over. It's not automatic loss. At times it felt like that last season, with how he was playing, hucking the ball up a million feet in the air, looked like a punt and just getting picked off. Like, what is going on? But so far, under the tutelage of Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, and also having some more help around him, Zach looks to be a little bit more calm, a little bit more comfortable. I thought, yes. And by the way, I'm not saying he was perfect. There were a couple passes where just sailed him right over wide receivers' heads, just completely airmailed it. There were times where, I felt like he was pressured, didn't know what to do, so just threw the ball away or took a sack. And it's like, okay, obviously we need to get better in those categories, but can you figure out the mistake, first of all, and then apply the solution in practice and next week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or maybe in joint practices? That's the ultimate goal for me, because, when those things happen, I just feel like long term, we will be in a better place as an organization on how we feel about the quarterback room. Next up, run blocking. I felt like it was a lot better. We were getting so much of an initial push physically that running backs just had room to breathe. They weren't just running into a wall. Now, there were some points where, we had no gains and whatnot, but, from a top to bottom standpoint, I felt like pretty much throughout the day, running backs had space. They had opportunities to put a one-on-one move against a defender in open field. They weren't getting dragged down immediately. There was a lot of reports in camp that Quinnen Williams is just blowing up plays. As Aaron Rodgers is handing the football off, the running back is getting it, and Quinnen Williams is standing right there. That is not going to fly in the regular season. And because we had our starters out there, McGovern, Lakin, right? A lot of starters out there. I was really half nervous, anxious. Like if we didn't get a push compared to the Hall of Fame game, like if we did not get that run game push with our starters out there, I was going to be frankly furious, to be honest with you, because that is huge. If we cannot run the ball with the amount of young talent that we have at running back and the amount of money and picks that we have invested in this offensive line, like I'm going to be irritated. So it was really exciting to see just the O-line go out there and create for running backs, really walling off defenders, giving opportunities to running backs. I feel like a standout player on defense was Zaire Barnes at linebacker, a 6th round pick out of Western Michigan. He racked up 8 total tackles. I mean, that's awesome. For a late round rookie in preseason week 1 to have an opportunity to go out there and make that amount of tackles. I mean, think about it from a linebacker perspective. You know, if you can hit triple digits, like that's a good season, right? If you're a linebacker and you rack up 108 tackles, 108 total tackles, 120, 130 total tackles, you're like, man, you're a tackling machine. You're out there making plays. You're flying around the field. You're making an impact, run game, pass game. You're doing your thing. And Zaire Barnes had 8. So I think when we look at Barnes from a developmental standpoint, maybe he's a little further along, and hopefully he gets some more opportunities as the practices and weeks go along. Two players that need to be talked about, both kickers. Thomas Morstead, from a punting standpoint, was phenomenal. He looked great out there in both games. I failed to talk about him in the Hall of Fame game. I should have. He was on my mind, and I forgot about it, and I felt horrible about it. This week, I'm not doing it. He deserves to be talked about. I feel much better off with Morstead as opposed to Braden Mann. The funny story is the Jets opted to go with Mann last season as opposed to Morstead, but whatever, it's last season. This year, I feel great about it. So far, he's looked really good. He's a veteran. He's had playoff success with the Saints. Greg Zuerlein, on the other hand, again, another veteran, another guy here who's experienced a ton of success throughout his career. And he was 5 for 5 on the day, 3 for 3 in extra points, 2 for 2 on field goals. His longest field goal was a 47-yard attempt. Greg Zuerlein has been automatic. Not just yesterday. He looked great in the Hall of Fame game. He looked great last season with the Jets. He's looked great in practice, in training camp practices with the team so far. Special teams cost the Jets games last year. Games. That cannot fly this year. We cannot be losing games. If the Jets are duking it out with the Chiefs, if we're, if it's a, if the Jets are going toe-to-toe with Buffalo, it's 31-31. Aaron Rodgers cannot lead this Jets offense down the field, get them in a field goal range, right? Set them up with a 47-yard attempt and just have the kicker just, whiff it completely. That cannot happen. We have to have solidified kicking potential. Greg Zuerlein brings that to the table, and I am extremely excited about that. I know it's the kicker. I know it's not QB. I know it's not the high flying wide receiver. I know it's not the double-digit sack pass rusher. But Greg Zuerlein, having him on the roster, is like that's the glue. Special teams is the glue. If you're shanking punts, if you are muffing fair catches, if you are, taking kickoff returns out of the end zone and bringing it back 7 yards, that way your offense is constantly, behind the 8 ball, if you will, missing field goals, missing extra points. If that stuff is happening on a week-to-week basis, or, at least happening in the big games, it's just not a place that you want to be. You don't want to be rolling the dice at the kicker spot or at the punter position in a playoff game. Not at all. So I felt like yesterday, from an offensive standpoint, defensive standpoint, coaching standpoint, because I really like what Hackett put together, special team standpoint, the Jets did great. We did great. So many positive things to take away from the game. I cannot wait to see what you guys have to say down below in the comment section. I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much, and as always, go Jets.